Hello, this is Mary Collardita, and I'm looking at how to know God's will through what He says in His Word and how He interacts with the people of the Bible. And I've been looking at Ruth, and today I'm going to do the last chapter, chapter 4 of Ruth. A little bit of review. So the book of Ruth is about Naomi and how she left with her husband and her 2 sons and went to the plateau of Moab. Her husband died, sounds like shortly thereafter. Her 2 sons married, and after 10 years they died. And she then, feeling very empty and bitter in her heart because she felt like God was punishing her, she was going to go back to the land of her people, so in Bethlehem. And the 2 daughters-in-law were going to go with her, but she told them not to. She said, go back to your families and have families of your own. And the 2 women wept and did not want to leave her. But one of them did and went back to her family, and the other, Ruth, went with Naomi and made a covenant with Naomi, saying, where you go, I will go, where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people will be my people, your God, my God. Where you die, I will be buried. May the Lord do unto me ever so grievously, if anything but death separate me from you. She vowed to go with Naomi to care for her. So when they got to Bethlehem, the people rejoiced that she had come back. And they said, isn't this Naomi? And she said, don't call me Naomi, because that means sweet. Call me Mara, which means bitter. I went away full, but the Lord has brought me back empty. Then in order to provide for themselves, Ruth went to a field to glean. She happened to go to the field of Boaz, and she went early in the morning, gleaned till late at night, and he knew all about her and talked with her and said to his servants, give her favor, and told her to glean with his women. And so she did, and she took back food, her leftovers from the meal, and she took what she had gleaned back to Naomi. And Naomi said, who was it? Whose field did you go into? And she said, Boaz. And Naomi says, he's a kinsman redeemer. And she told him, this is now later on, after all the gleaning was done, the harvest was done, that she should go and lay at the feet of Boaz at night, but not let him see her. When he discovers her, she is to do whatever he tells her to. So she was telling Ruth to give herself to Boaz as a wife. When Boaz discovered her, he said he blessed her for choosing him, but said that he could not be her kinsman redeemer because there was one closer and he had first rights. And so he told her not to let anybody see her, leave before dawn, and he gave her 6 measures of barley or the grain, and when she went back and told Naomi said, he will take care of this matter today, and So that's where we're at. We're at chapter 4. So I'm going to read chapter 4. Boaz went to the gate and took his seat there. Along came the other redeemer of whom he had spoken. Boaz called to him by name. "Come, sit here." And he did so. Then Boaz picked out 10 of the elders of the town and asked them to sit nearby. When they had done this, he said to the other redeemer, "Naomi, who has come back from the plateau of Moab, is putting up for sale the piece of land that belonged to our kinsman Elimelech. So I thought I would inform you before those here present, including the elders of my people, purchase the field and act as redeemer. But if you do not want to do it, tell me so that I may know, for no one has a right of redemption prior to yours, and mine is next." And so the man answered, "I will act as redeemer." But Boaz continued, "When you acquire the field from Naomi, you also acquire responsibility for Ruth the Moabite, the widow of the late heir, to raise up a family for the deceased on his estate." The Redeemer replied, "I cannot exercise my right of redemption, for that would endanger my own estate. You do it in my place, for I cannot." Now it used to be the custom in Israel that to make a binding contract of redemption or exchange, one party would take off a sandal and give it to the other. This was the form of attesting in Israel. So the other redeemer, in saying to Boaz, "Acquire it for yourself," drew off his sandal. Boaz then said to the elders and to all the people, "You are witnesses today that I have acquired from Naomi all the holdings of Elimelech, Chilion, and Mahlon. I also acquire Ruth the Moabite, the widow of Mahlon, as my wife, in order to raise up a family for her late husband on his estate, so that the name of the deceased may not perish from his people and his place. Do you witness this today?" All those at the gate, including the elders, said, "We do." "May the Lord make the woman come into your house like Rachel and Leah, who between them built up the house of Israel. Prosper in Ephratah. Bestow a name in Bethlehem. With the offspring the Lord will give you from the young woman. May your house become like the house of Perez, whom Tamar bore to Judah." Boaz took Ruth. When they came together as husband and wife, the Lord enabled her to conceive, and she bore a son. Then the women said to Naomi, "Blessed is the Lord, who has not failed to provide you today with a redeemer. May he become famous in Israel. He will restore your life and be the support of your old age. For his mother is the daughter-in-law who loves you. She is worth more to you than 7 sons." Naomi took the boy, cradled him against her breast, and cared for him. The neighbor women joined the celebration. A son has been born to Naomi. They named him Obed. He was the father of Jesse, the father of David. So this is the end of this chapter. And once again, I would encourage you, just as I do, to write a summary of the main points. So I'm just going to read my summary quick. This is from Ruth 4, chapter 4. Boaz went to the gate where business took place publicly. He called to the other redeemer to sit, and he did. Then Boaz picked out 10 elders and asked them to sit. Boaz said to them, Naomi is putting up for sale the land of her husband and sons. And he asked the other redeemer, will you buy it? Or I, as next kinsman, will buy it. But then Boaz said, and the man said he would, but then Boaz said, but you must also take Ruth the Moabite and raise up an heir for the deceased in their land. The man said that he couldn't take Ruth because that would endanger his own estate, and that Boaz now would be free to give him to redeem the estate and take Ruth. And he gave a sandal to Boaz as a sign of the agreement. And then Boaz said to the elders and all the people that you are witnesses. So he gained the land of the 3 men and Ruth as his wife to raise up a descendant for the deceased name. And all of the gate blessed Boaz, saying that Ruth should be like Rachel and Leah and Tamar, and bestow a name in Bethlehem. So Boaz and Ruth married and had a son. Then the women blessed Naomi and said, may your grandson become famous in Israel and restore your life and be a support of you in your old age. For the mother of your grandson, your daughter-in-law, who loves you, and she is worth more to you than 7 sons. And Naomi cared and lifted up and cradled in her arms the baby boy. And then the other women said to her, a son has been born to Naomi. And they named him Obed, who was the father of Jesse, who was the father of David. So, once again, we have 3 people who are all acting righteously. They're doing the right thing. Ruth, Naomi, and Boaz. And the people in the community as well. They have a way of establishing justice and inheritance rights and all of this, and they are fulfilling those obligations. So once again, I've kind of thought this is really mostly about Naomi. So let's look at Ruth and Boaz. First off, Boaz is a very righteous man. He cares for his servants, he provides for them, he pays good wages, they respect him. Remember that whatever in previous chapters, he has told the men to leave the women alone, and they do so. They're protected. They don't have to fear being accosted by young, foolish men in that way. And he also is respectful of Ruth when she lays at his feet. He doesn't just take advantage of her. He knows that that would be wrong to do. He knows that this is all about redeeming the land of Naomi and raising up a descendant for Naomi and for her husband and her sons. And he's very respectful of that. So he does what is right. And then when it comes to seeing whether or not he's going to be able to take to redeem this land and and gain Ruth, he goes in the place where, it's like going downtown, and it's where everything takes place, and he sees the other Redeemer guy and asks him if he would sit with him, and then he gets the elders. So he's got witnesses of the transaction. So Boaz is a righteous man. He does what is right. Now, if you think about how is this God's will? It's God's will always to do what is right, to follow the laws of your land, or the customs of your people that are righteous, that bear good fruit. That's God's will. Boaz, he didn't go out looking for this woman. And remember that he says to Ruth earlier on, when she's laying at his feet, that she could have picked someone young, rich or old, but she chose him. So he must have felt he was older than her, and he was honored. We don't know. You can look up if he had other wives or whatever. I don't know. All I know is that he acted honorably towards Ruth, and then towards redeeming the land and getting Ruth as a wife. So all of that testifies to how to know God's will is to do what is right, do what is righteous, fulfill your word, fulfill your covenants, your agreements, be honorable, have witnesses. He knew that was an important part of this. So now let's look at Ruth. Ruth has been faithful to Naomi. She's been faithful long before she came to Bethlehem, or to the city. Long before she left Moab, because remember, she didn't want to leave Naomi. She swore to Naomi to stay with her. And she did. She loved her. The other woman did too. She obeyed Naomi. She honored her. She believed that whatever Naomi was telling her to do, whether it was gleaning in the fields, she worked hard, sun up to sundown. She laid at the Boaz's feet. She obeyed her. She trusted that Naomi was asking her to do the things that were in the best interests of Ruth and Naomi. So she was faithful. She treated Naomi as her mother, and Naomi then treated her as a daughter. And so I want to also look at we'll look at that at the end. And then the last person here is Naomi herself. Remember when she went with her husband and her 2 sons to Moab, lost the 3 men in her life, was going to come back with her daughters-in-law, turned around and said, this isn't a good thing for you. You can't go with me. You don't know me. I mean, you know me, but you don't know my people, my land, or my God. And they probably knew that I shouldn't say that, because it's every indication in this book is that Naomi and her husband and sons were faithful to God. Because of their actions, you can tell that they were obedient and loved God. And so the 2 women probably realized that this God, your God will be my God. So they rejected the pagan gods. And Ruth was willing to go with Naomi. So that says a lot about Naomi. Remember that both women wept at leaving her. So Naomi was a righteous woman, even though she felt bitter and felt like the Lord was against her. Remember, she says, I left full and came back empty. So she made lots of choices in her life that they believed God was leading them, and yet the results were sorrowful, bore emptiness in her. And yet she's still trusting God. And now we're at this point where she knows that Boaz is a righteous man, and whatever happens, it's going to be one way or the other. If Boaz doesn't take the position as redeemer, the other man will, and the matter of their land and their name as descendants would be settled either by Boaz or by the first kinsman redeemer. So God worked in all this. Remember, He leads our steps. He directs our path. We don't know the outcome. We walk in faith. And then they marry Ruth and Boaz and have a son. And you notice all the admonitions of joy and rejoicing and blessing are towards Naomi. Now I have to back up a little bit. The elders and the people blessed Ruth. They said, may she be as Rachel and Leah. That's pretty big. And Tamar and Judah. So this tells us it's God's will to proclaim blessings. And we can proclaim blessings. And blessings, that's exactly what's happening. Now going back to Naomi, the women, let's look at this again. It says, the woman said to Naomi, behold, blessed is the Lord who has not failed to provide you today with a redeemer. May he become, that's the grandson, famous in Israel. Your grandson will restore your life and be the support of your old age. For his mother is the daughter-in-law who loves you. She is more valuable to you than 7 sons. Naomi, went away full, came back empty, sorrowful, feeling like God was against her. And yet, she had been blessed abundantly. And the women recognized that Naomi had a daughter-in-law who loved her, was supportive of her, cared for her. And then her son would do so also. So Naomi didn't think she would ever be cared for. She lost the men in her life, and God restored it 7-fold. And it says here that the women, the neighbor women, named him Obed. I can't, my glasses aren't too good. I don't know what Obed means, but he's the father of Jesse, the father of David. And so she's going to be, Ruth is going to be named in the genealogy of Jesus. And Naomi has been blessed. How does this bless us? To know what God's will is for us. Well, do what's right. Be faithful. Be just. Be forgiving. Care for your elders. Honor your mother and father. The blessing is that you will have a long life. And you will be blessed if you honor your mother and father. Ruth did. She honored her mother-in-law. Now you might think, well, she left her mother and father. Yes, she did. It was tradition for the women to leave their household, and I think that's right. I better not go there, maybe I'm wrong. The point is you honor your mother and father and care for them. And she did. Ruth had a righteous mother-in-law. Sometimes we have parents who are not righteous, but we still honor them. Naomi was faithful. Boaz was faithful. Ruth was faithful. Even the people of the village and the first kinsmen were all faithful, righteous, and doing what was God's will, what was known to be God's will. So, thank you for watching. If you didn't watch the other videos on Ruth, you can. Okay, thank you.